In this episode, we will be hearing people talk about the phrase, marriage is just a piece of paper.
If somebody hires you for a job, will you sign a contract?
Yep.
That wedding certificate is that
marriage
contract.
certificate. I hate when people say, oh, it's just a piece of paper. Your birth certificate and a piece of paper and it's important.
Yes.
Your passport and one piece of paper, but I'm pretty damn sure it's important too. These things make life easier. These things allow you to go through life with a sense of security and assurance that, hey, this person have my back. This person care for me.
The day I'm too motherfucking grown to play house. You play house. Playing house is for children. Because guess what we don't do? We don't play these bills. We don't play when we making these babies. We don't play when we sharing these responsibilities. We don't play when we swapping these bodily fluids. We don't play when we say that we're in a committed relationship. So why the fuck would I let you make a joke out of being married to me or committing to me?
But some
it would
people
never
say
happen.
it's just a piece of paper. How do you feel about it?
Money's a piece of paper. What can you do without money? Nothing. What would life be without money? Nothing. You would be broke as shit. A warrant is a piece of paper. And when they push that warrant through, they'll come lock you the fuck up with that piece of paper. A deed to a house is a piece of paper. And if you don't have that deed to that house with that piece of paper, you don't own that deed. You don't own that fucking property. A doctorate degree, a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, a master's degree. These are all printed out on pieces of paper, but these are powerful pieces of paper. But people try to say it's a piece of paper to try to downplay the completeness and the significance of the union that it is to be married.
Marriage is nothing but a piece of paper. Why that accusation and statement is absolutely false. And I'll give you an example. Hello, my name is Carla and restoring healthy mindsets is my thing. One of my ladies also was mentioning this, that at the beginning she thought that marriage was just a piece of paper, but she had to learn the hard way that it's not. She was telling me that she got pregnant and had a child with her baby daddy, and he's now in the military. See, if they would have gotten married before and would have gotten a divorce, his check, legally speaking, half of it would have gone to her because they were married and going through a divorce. But because they were not married and they still had a child together, that man currently is not taking ownership and he left her abandoned with the child. And see, if they would have gotten married, he would have needed to help her financially. And if the baby daddy wouldn't have wanted to give her money, she could legally go up to his chief of command and tell them what was going on. And they would have needed to give her 50% of his paycheck, simply because they would have been legally married and getting a divorce. That changes everything. She would have been able to help and give her child a better life because she would have had financial assistance. But because she did not go that route and thought that marriage is a piece of paper, she no longer has access to those resources. You need to understand that marriage is very important for a woman because it is her protection. And it also gives a man incentive to take ownership and responsibility of his woman and his family. Ladies, be smarter.
Stop calling marriage a piece of paper. You don't call your paycheck a piece of paper. You value that. You don't call your business license a piece of paper. You value that. You don't call your degree from your university a piece of paper. You really value that. But marriage, designed by God, ordained by God, lifelong commitment. It is not good for a man to be alone, so I'll make him a helpmate. Having someone alongside you for life who's on your team, that's just dumb. Piece of paper.
You ever hear somebody argue, you don't need to save sex for marriage? I mean, marriage is just a piece of paper. If marriage is just a piece of paper, I want you to consider this. People who get married have higher rates of mental health. They have a higher income, lower rates of alcoholism, sexual abuse. They're more likely to send their kids to college. They're more likely to report higher levels of sexual satisfaction, have lower rates of domestic violence, and are likely to live significantly longer lives. And so if marriage is just a piece of paper, like, that's an awesome piece of paper. Like, I want that piece of paper. The reality is marriage is not simply a piece of paper any more than a winning lottery ticket is just a piece of paper. No, it's something that signifies a much bigger reality, the total gift of the person. And so the total gift of the body, which is sexual intimacy, should correspond with the total gift of the person, which is marriage.
Marriage is not just a piece of paper. It's a blood covenant. Not just ink on a document, but a vow sealed with your life. God designed marriage to be holy, sacred, and binding, not casual, temporary, or disposable. This isn't a contract you can cancel. It's a covenant, just like the one Christ made with his church, sealed by sacrifice and sustained by love. If you treat marriage like it's just paperwork, Don't be surprised when it doesn't hold up in the storms. But when you honor it as a covenant, you'll see the power of unity, purpose, and forever love. Marriage is spiritual. Marriage is sacred. Marriage is holy.
Marriage is not just signing a piece of paper. Marriage is a blood covenant. One way that two individuals would enter into a blood covenant in the Old Testament is that they would take several animals and they would cut the animals in pieces, and then they would lay the pieces of the animal on the ground apart from one another. And then both parties would do something very interesting. They would walk in a figure 8 through the pieces of the animals. So walking through the pieces of the animals, they would do two things. Number one, they would state the vows that they're planning to keep as a part of this covenant. Number two, they would take a good look at the animals that were torn in pieces, and they were acknowledging that may their fate be as those animals that were torn in two if they don't keep their end of the covenant. They understood that entering into a covenant is a very serious thing, and it's something that you don't want to break, because you don't just break a marriage covenant. A marriage covenant breaks you. Just as the animals were torn in pieces in establishing the covenant, breaking the covenant causes the individuals who are breaking it to be torn apart also. And obviously this is not a physical tearing, but emotional and mental, and in their soul they're torn in a way that oftentimes requires God's healing to make that person whole again.
Don't you ever let anyone tell you that marriage is just a piece of paper. Marriage is a covenant with God. It is a sacred thing. You are locked in covenant with someone for the rest of your life. So treat it beautifully. Treat it lovely. There will be times, of course, where you are not going to agree. You're going to want your way, and it's not going to work out that way. You're going to have to pray for yourself, girl. You're going to have to pray for yourself more than often, because it's on you to have change in your life. And you can pray for your husband, pray for certain things that God will give him the wisdom on how to do certain things. Pray for romance, pray for date nights, pray for love, pray for understanding, but pray for you, because that thing can be hard, and you're learning that in this marriage, in this relationship, you're having to fight with each other and not against each other. Fight for each other, because the devil does not want to see you all succeed, because there is anointing on you all. It's marriage, it's a covenant. Sometimes you can notice people who get married immediately, they have problems, or after you get baptized, you can immediately have problems, because the devil sees, the enemy sees that you're now in covenant with God, that you are making the right steps towards being righteous and in covenant with God. So marriage is not just a piece of paper. It is a covenant with God, and it is sacred, and it is top priority. That's one of the first things that God created after he created the earth, after he created everything, after he breathed life into this world.
Marriage is a triple braided cord. It is a trifold covering, 3 strands, you, your spouse, and God. For 2 seconds, turn off your earthly ears. This is the reason why I get so upset when people say marriage is simply just a piece of paper. God is a witness. I keep crying whenever I'm trying to record this, but I need y'all to follow me. God is holding your marriage together. Without God at the center of your marriage, it will fail. There are going to be so many things that you lack: discernment, wisdom, patience, understanding, the fight to know what you're fighting for if God is not the center. So when we say certain things like marriage is just a simple piece of paper, that means that the moment that your happiness goes away with these fleeting emotions, then you decide that you want to leave. Lord be with me. What happens when you're in a trial? When there's a struggle, when there's a warfare, and there's no supernatural help there, what do? Now, this is not talking about abuse or infidelity or abandonment. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the things that you can work through. The enemy hates marriage because it multiplies power and purpose. Yeah, he can't stand that covenant. If you don't have God at the center of your marriage is going to be vulnerable. So when you start to feel that bitterness and that hate and that disgust and that anger and resentment, that pride, that division that shows up in your marriage because you counseled God out, you came into agreement with God. There is such a power in marriage to be able to intercede together and bring heaven's will into any earthly situation. 2 are better than 1 for many reasons. The enemy is going to attack your marriage, and this is the reason why marriage is so important and why it is so sacred, because that trifold covering that I highlighted earlier, those 3 strands, it's really hard for the enemy to unravel those strands during the attack because you have God in it. Y'all get that? That's the covenant. You have God in it.
Marriage is just a piece of paper. Well, if that's the case, may I have your deed? Can I have your degree? Can I have the registration for your car? Can I have your winning lottery ticket? Matter of fact, can I have $100? I'm confident the answer is no, because we all have an understanding that pieces of paper are symbolic and have value if we assign it to it, right? So please, let's stop spreading falsities about marriage just being a piece of paper. If you don't want to be married, you can't find somebody to marry you, then say that.
I always hear people say foolish things like marriage isn't anything but a piece of paper, and that it doesn't mean anything, and a piece of paper wouldn't make us any more married. So let's talk about pieces of paper this morning. Money is a piece of paper, and people are damn near rob their mothers for money because that's an important piece of paper, because that piece of paper could change your life, right? A car title is a piece of paper. A deed to a house is a piece of paper, and people spend their whole lives trying to own houses. People spend their whole lives trying to own their cars. How about this? A warrant for your arrest is a piece of paper, and they can kick in your home and lock you up and obtain you and throw you in prison with that piece of paper. A subpoena is a piece of paper, and if you don't bring your ass to court, then you'll probably be in trouble. But how about this one, right? Your doctorate's degree, your bachelor's degree, your associate's degree, your PhD, that little certification that says you're a lash tech or a beautician or any of those things, they're just pieces of paper, but those pieces of paper hold weight. If you cannot see the benefits of being married to a person, then you're with the wrong person. It's funny how people are trying to say it's a business contract when they're not serious about you. I'm not letting nobody date me for a lifetime. You're going to marry me because I'm marriage material. I'm worth the commitment. And if I am a business contract, it's the best business money could buy.
So if a man says, like, marriage is just a piece of paper, it's just because he doesn't see a future with you. He would like to be able to easily get away from you when the time comes. And you might be thinking, oh, but we're living together, it's so serious. Like, that's not serious. Like, you can kick each other out. Like, you'll see this in women of all ages, where they're like, oh, he just doesn't think we need paper to prove our love. There is no love. Like, that man doesn't love you. And you might have really bought into whatever their reason is, whatever their excuse is, like, oh, they've just never seen a marriage work out, so it's not for them. Maybe he's already been married before. Oh, I don't want to do that again. I've already been through that. They aren't serious about you. And someone's got to be blunt and say it, because too many women stay with these guys for like 5 years, 10 years, and they're just dating because marriage wasn't for him. They break up. He goes on to marry the next girl. That's a very common story, because he was stringing you along until the woman he wanted to marry came along. You deserve a guy that is already sold out on the idea of you. Marriage is not just a piece of paper. That's what men say when they don't want to commit to you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and stay tuned for more.